to show these two concepts, which sound quite large and complicated. So encapsulation. Okay. I usually break this apart in my head. I start with capsule. Okay. I think about this is a little pill, if you can imagine. Okay. A little capsule. Okay. Then the okay, en. We're putting something inside the capsule. And again, just to really stretch it, ation. Well, this is just the overall process, of putting something together. Okay, so encapsulation is really about just wrapping everything into a packaged form that has a clear boundary around it. Okay, so that is hopefully not a wildly difficult term to think about. A good example for this is your bank account, or a bank system, I should say. Okay. If you think about a bank, it probably has, I hope we have customers, and those customers will probably have accounts. Okay, we'll not do a full model of a bank account, but that's probably some of the things we think about are kind of important to have inside a bank account. Okay, so customer, well, we create our class for this, and we can think of some fields. We probably have the name of the customer. We probably have maybe some personal information like their address. And then there might be some, maybe like a customer ID or something, so we can identify them and so on. And then we have our account. Okay. Now, there is nothing really stopping us from putting all the information regarding bank accounts into the customer as well, and then just turning this into a mega class. Okay, but this is a bad idea, because then if you have everything packed into one class, it gets really hard to manage. Okay, and it's really hard to understand how the mega customer everything class works, because then it becomes thousands and thousands of lines of code. Okay, we want to avoid that. So this process of encapsulation means we put everything to do with customers inside customer, and everything to do with bank account inside bank account. Okay, so the bank account is probably going to have a similar notion of customer ID, so we can actually create some kind of link between these things. So we don't need to put them all in the same place. But we might also have the balance, the amount of money in the account. Okay, that's the first part. Encapsulation really just means this idea that we are creating these borders around specific parts of the system where it makes sense. Okay, and because it's object oriented, you really get to get a nice resolution of that. There's nothing stopping you putting customer and account together. In terms of the compiler won't care that everything is in one mega class. It just becomes really difficult for humans to manage. Okay, so then if you have millions of lines of code in a single document, good luck trying to maintain that. Okay, the other thing I talked about was information hiding. And this term can be interpreted in slightly different ways, but it is somewhat related to encapsulation. This is the idea that, say, in my account class, I'm going to have two sort of ways to interpret information hiding. One way to interpret information hiding is, let's say I have a add deposit method as part of account. Okay, so I want to add some amount to this customer account. Now, we can understand that this is probably implemented as a method and has all of this implementation inside. Now, whenever the customer calls my account.add or customer.add, or yeah, accounts, let's write it down here. Let's say they account.add deposit. They have no idea how this works, okay? Essentially, the implementation is hidden. They just call the method. That's all you see is there is a method called add deposit. Same notion when I was looking at the string class, the documentation. I can see if I scroll down far enough, let's say equals ignore case, I can see there's a method to do this. I can see there's a description of it, but I don't actually get the implementation. It doesn't show me the actual source code, how to do that. I don't need to know about the source code to call this method. I can just understand, well, it's got a good name to begin with. Do these strings equal each other when you ignore the case? Okay, but how they actually achieve that, I have no idea. I would actually need to go to my my implementation. Like if I downloaded the source code of Java and decompiled everything, then before I could actually find that out. So this is one form of information hiding, the fact that the implementation details are essentially hidden, okay, and you don't need to know them. The other part of this, and maybe I'll use a different color, is the access to information as well, okay? We can probably imagine that it's a really good idea if you have a field balance that stores the balance of your account, that this is protected. Only the account class itself can access this field, okay? You can't, as a customer, just randomly access balance. So account dot balance, yeah, becomes, yeah, let's have a nice, I don't know how many zeros this is going to be, but if that was public, you could just go and add large deposits with no checks. Okay, so this idea of access modifiers is another form of information hiding, that you can protect the information that's in here from external sources as well. Okay, so information hiding, if you look of definitions online, it's sometimes a bit of a mix of these different parts. The idea that implementation details are hidden, or the access to certain information is blocked or unavoidable. Okay, so you put those two together, you get the first two fundamental parts of object-oriented programming. Encapsulation, we put things into classes. That's all that you need to know about it. And information hiding, we have different ways of preventing access or understanding how things are achieved. Okay, and again, these are good things. You shouldn't care how the add deposit method is implemented. We can ourselves understand that this probably has a lot of things to do with checking the customer actually is who they say they are, checking their credentials, and so on. Okay, and we do that via a method instead of just letting the balance be open.